RDSP is a tool that we can use for providing financial security. So it's another tool in the toolbox. So registered disability savings plan set up when Jim Flaherty was the Minister of Finance because he had a member of his family that had a disability, so he was sensitive to these issues. It's as far as I know, unique to Canada. It's been named one of Canada's top 10 greatest social innovations, and it's been around since 2007. So there's an eligible plan holder, so somebody qualifying for the disability tax credit.
We're going to call them Ellie.
Ellie, okay.
Yeah.
Next slide. So you set aside money, have it grow on a tax-deferred basis. So when I contribute to an RDSP, I don't get a deduction, but the money inside the plan grows on a tax-deferred basis. So if I get a return of 5%, it's not 5% less tax, it's 5%. So, over the compounding effect, you get a good growth. Now, the tax will eventually be paid, but you're deferring tax. Most of tax planning is deferring tax to a later point in time. So you've got more capital to work with, and then when you start taking the capital out, then you pay the tax. So you don't get a deduction going in, but you're deferring tax on that amount.
And it also opens opportunities for government grants, government contributions. So that's one of the best things about RDSPs, which we're going to get into. It's a really phenomenal thing in that way. And it's also not considered an asset for federal or provincial disability purposes. So it's not considered, money that's in an RDSP isn't considered, in a sense, owned by Ellie.
Yeah.
When it comes to disability. So again, another great thing about RDSPs. We already flipped through the history, so then how?
Okay, usually you're going to have a trust company set up, administer the trust, because it has to comply with these federal rules. You'll let the trust company worry about that. Managed by a director, so in the case of a child under the age of 19, that's going to be the parents who are going to be the manager. Once the child becomes an adult, the goal is to have the child take over management of the RDSP. Now, if the child doesn't have a capacity, the parent can continue under interim legislation to manage the RDSP for the child. In BC, you would have the child sign a representation agreement that the parent as the child's representative can do the advising on where to invest it. So usually with the case of a minor child, it's established by the parents, one plan per person. You can switch carriers. If you're with the Bank of Montreal and you don't like them anymore, you can switch to another bank, but one plan per person. That's just a list of institutions that offer RDSPs, lots to choose from. There may be others, it's not an exhaustive list. Has to be a Canadian resident who is eligible for the disability tax credit. So Ellie has to be a resident in Canada. Now, contributions can come from anybody, because remember, you don't get a tax deduction. So,
and we'll go into those.
And we'll go into that. There's a lifetime limit of $200,000 per disabled person. So you can put in $200,000 and then have that money grow. And it can, again, it can come from anybody. So it could be a relative who puts in money. The director has to accept the contribution, of course, but anybody can contribute. So it's a way of having family members help by contributing to this fund for Ellie's benefit to provide for income down the road. So RDSP contributions from relatives or
private sources. Yeah.
You've got earnings inside the plan that are tax deferred while you're in the plan, plus you've got these government grants. So that's the RDSP. Now, as we said, Ellie owns the funds in the RDSP, so she's the owner. So if she dies, that's part of her estate. The contributor doesn't get the contributions back. It's not like a registered education savings plan where the contributor gets the contributions back, but it's there for Ellie. So when you set this up, if Ellie is over 16 years age, probably a good idea to have Ellie sign a will to deal with how those assets are going to be dealt with. Hopefully you'll never have to rely on the will, but just in case something happens. If Ellie has no will, it's an intestacy, and if Ellie is married, the spouse gets the first $300,000, then it's split up among other people. So anyone can contribute, and with permission. You can't force somebody to take money. So no annual limit. So you can put in as much as you want, but there's a lifetime limit on all contributions of $200,000. So you also qualify for government contributions. There's two types. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this quickly.
No, it's great. It's
Pipe
good.
in, jump in if you want. Matching contributions, which has this long, cumbersome name the Canada Disability Savings Grant. I think of them as matching contributions. So if you put in something, the government will put in something. So basically, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but the government will kick in extra money in certain circumstances. Then you've got a grant, which is the Canada Disability Savings Bond, but I think of it as a grant because the government kicks in money even if nobody else does. And this is a straight government grant, but it's dependent on income. It's aimed at somebody who has very little income, then the government will help them with their plan. So the matching contribution, federal government matches contributions up to $70,000 over lifetime. So $200,000 of private contributions, $70,000 here, so we're up to $270,000. There's a yearly limit of $3,500 on the amount that the government will put in. So it depends on the level of net family income, and Ellie doesn't qualify after age 49, so you want to get these grants before Ellie turns 49. If the net family income is over $89,401, you get a 1-to-1 matching grant. So if I put in $1,000, the government will put in $1,000. Now, if my income is under $89,401, by income I mean net family income, it's 300% on the first $500 to a maximum of $1,500, 200% on the next $1,000 to a maximum of $2,000. I think we do the math in the next slide. Oh, no, I guess we don't. But you could get, because of the matching, you could get, is it $1,500 becomes a much bigger amount.
That's the way I do math.
Okay.
That's the way I do math.
Now, when Ellie is 18 or under, the family income is based on the income of the parents. Once Ellie turns 19, the family income is Ellie's income plus Ellie's spouse's income. So even if Ellie is living at home, you don't include the parents' income anymore. So you want to make sure that Ellie files tax returns to set out her income level. And you also have to remember that if you happen to have $200,000 sitting around the house and Ellie is only 12, you don't want to put all of that $200,000 into the RDSP because your grants are going to be determined on net family income. You want to leave a little bit until after Ellie turns 19 so you can put in an extra bit to get those government grants. Okay? I don't imagine that many people have $200,000 in a drawer somewhere, but you do have to do a little bit of planning there. If there's more than one household and the parents have shared custody, the government will use the net family income level that's most advantageous for Ellie. That's nice of them. That just shows that the income level increases as time goes on with inflation. So if you happen to have $200,000 lying around, you want to reserve at least $30,000 of contribution room for those years after Ellie is 18, so you can get the maximum government matching grants once Ellie's income is only her income and doesn't include your income. Assuming that you're $89,401 or above as net family income. So just a planning point. Canada Disability Savings Bond. Now this is the part where the government puts in money even if you don't. They'll put in up to $20,000, so 200 plus 70, so we're up to 290,000 here. The parents depend on family income level. If the family income is below $26,021, the government will put in $1,000 a year. And again, it's net family income, so it's the years after 19, it's just Ellie's income and her spouse's income if she's married. The payment begins to phase out and disappears entirely once family income is $44,701. Again, the numbers will vary each year, and there's no government contribution after Ellie turns 49. The terminology is cumbersome government terminology, but there are matching contributions, and they require that somebody put in some money for Ellie, and the government will match it. For the other CDSP, that's a straight grant, but it's limited to $20,000 over lifetime. So that means you should open an RDSP if you qualify for the disability tax credit and the income is low, because at least you'll get the $20,000 of government grants, and every little bit helps. There's a rule that if you haven't taken advantage of the government grants in earlier years, you can catch up, subject to these rules. But really, you want to put in the money to get the government grants, because the sooner you get the money into the plan, the sooner you start earning income, and the sooner you start building up something for
Earning
later.
interest, yeah.
So even though there are these catch-up rules, don't rely on them. Put the money in as soon as you can, subject to that, after 19 income comment. But yeah, you want to put the money in sooner rather than later, because the main advantage of this is the tax-free compounding that occurs. Now, just some general rules. If Ellie ceases to qualify for the disability tax credit, the government's going to want the money back. Now, I think you've got 4 years. If Ellie ceases to qualify because of something temporary and then requalifies, I think you've got 4 years before you have to take the money out. If Ellie withdraws the money before reaching age 60, the government will want some of its contributions back, because it's putting in money so that Ellie has something to draw on, and so that she's not requiring as much social assistance. So the government wants the money there to take care of Ellie later on in life. Or if Ellie dies, then the government wants its money back. Now, on the withdrawal, remember there was no deduction going in. So part of each withdrawal is a return of money that's already been taxed. So in this example, the RDSP has $100,000 when Ellie is 60. $60,000 came in from private contributions. People contributed money. They didn't get a deduction, so that money has to come out tax-free. $20,000 was kicked in by the government, so that's going to be taxed when it comes out. And there have been no government contributions in the past 10 years, so we don't have to worry about having to repay government contributions because we took the money out too soon. And there's $20,000 in accumulated investment income. We were a fairly conservative investor. So Ellie takes out $10,000 after she turns 60. So 6/10 of that 6,000 is going to be tax-free, because it's
of that 10,000.
Of that 10,000, sorry, because it's 60,000 over 100,000 is 6/10. So 6/10 is basically a return of those private contributions. So she pays tax.
She doesn't pay tax on that.
So she pays tax only on that.
Only on the $4,000. Yeah.
And that makes sense, because people didn't get a deduction going in. And that's just the same thing in graphic format. So again, the rules have to begin at age 60, so the government wants her to start withdrawing funds at age 60. And there are rules about, usually the private contributions are going to at least match the government contributions. There are some special rules if if it's a case where the government's put in all the money, then Ellie is more limited in the amount that she can withdraw.
On a yearly basis, yeah.
And there's complicated formulae for determining how much money that Ellie can withdraw in any 1 year. The government doesn't want her to, the idea is to leave some money in the plan for later on. If Ellie turns out that her life expectancy is much shorter than normal, then she'll be able to withdraw more. But in general, it's going to be based on actuarial tables of the general life expectancy. And so it's sort of like a registered retirement income fund. The government wants you to withdraw money, and it depends on life expectancy. And then good thing about this plan is that in BC, the withdrawals from the RDSP are not going to affect government benefit levels. RDSPs are one tool, but don't forget the others. So if you have an RDSP, you can still use a family trust. You can still use a qualified disability trust set up in a will. One doesn't exclude the other. So I think everybody should have an RDSP set up because it's very useful. And if you have the financial resources to also have a qualified disability trust set up on death, that's a good thing. And if you have the resources to set up a family trust, that's also good. So we're not excluding anything